All right. Okay. So, hey, folks, welcome to the Battles of the First World War podcast. With me today is Aaron Heft, currently serving as a Sergeant First Class in the Army National Guard. Aaron works as the NCOIC, that's NCO in charge of the Army National Guard's Leader Development Program, where he uses lessons from the past to train and prepare today's soldiers for the battlefield. Today, he joins us to discuss the American 28th Keystone Division in World War I, a unit of primarily Pennsylvania National Guardsmen with whom Aaron served for 15 years. This talk will not be exclusively about the 28th time in the Meuse-Argonne, so you will hear about some other battles and engagements elsewhere along the Western Front. And folks, there is a video version of this episode as well that will be uploaded to the Battles of the First World War podcast, little known and generally neglected YouTube channel. It will be shared in social media, so you can check out anything. Well, you can check out Aaron's awesome office here, which has tons of 28th Division memorabilia hanging up. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and get started. Aaron, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Mike, it's absolutely my pleasure. As I said, I've been a listener for several years now, so it's pretty cool to get the chance to be on the show as well.
This is so cool. And so folks, right before we started recording, Aaron told me that when he conducted a staff ride in, was it 2018, 2019?
Just the end of 2019, yeah.
2019. So he actually had people listen to this podcast as like required listening. So yay. All right. That's pretty awesome. All right, Aaron. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do? I doubt the intro did you any justice whatsoever. So please, the floor is yours.
Sure. No, I think you got it pretty well. So we run a variety of leader development programs. Our goal is really to try and expand junior leaders' awareness of the Guard's larger role in national defense. And we do that through seminars and trainings around the country, interacting with both military and civilian agencies that the Guard works with. Now, with that, I also focus specifically with a program called Combat Field Studies. And what that program does is it uses staff rides as an educational tool for soldiers, critical thinking, leadership examples, and even some modern tactics and doctrine that can be drawn from historic battles. And we'll take soldiers to battlefields around the United States, and when COVID's not getting in the way, over to France. And we'll take their lineage units experience in combat and use that as a teaching tool.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's awesome. Yeah, I've seen a lot of your pictures on Instagram, like going to Antietam, Gettysburg, and everything. So that's fantastic. I do. So here's the personal question that I said I was going to ask you before we started recording. So it is personal. So certainly not going to touch anything else in today's climate. But so I wanted to know, and it's been some time. I wanted to know if the grieving process is over. So back early in the year, you had a bit of a field stash, and it's now gone. I wanted to know if how you've taken that. Is that okay? Like everything?
Yeah, it's been a struggle. As a career infantryman, going to the field, growing a mustache is kind of a thing. And I considered the first couple months of COVID to be a field problem. So I grew out a pretty bad mustache, and it's been quite a while since it's been gone. And I've adjusted to that. My wife very, very much so has adjusted to it being gone. So
nice.
So maybe we'll see it return soon.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So I mean, I understand. So this nonsense I have around my mouth, I call this, like, to anyone who will ask, and quite honestly, not many people do, but this is my veteran's goatee of righteousness right here. So this is, I can't wait for Veterans Day so I can just walk around my work and just tell people, like, you're welcome for the day off. So, but yeah, all right. So that was it. There's no other trick questions here.
Thank you. It's a good one.
So getting back to the Great War. So what sparked your interest in the Great War? So was it did interest in the 28th Division come first, or was it like the other way around? Like, so how did this start for you?
So, believe it or not, I think interest in the 28th Division started before I ever entered the 28th Division. So I remember, like, for Great War specifically, every Sunday on my drive to church, we would pass one of those Spirit of the Doughboy statues that was in Easton, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I always just thought it was such a cool monument. I was always interested in it. And, I started taking an interest in Pennsylvania history, Pennsylvania Civil War regiments, going to Gettysburg as a young kid, that type of stuff. And as I got older, that kind of morphed and progressed into all eras. And then specifically for World War I history, I think I was in processing at my first unit, Charlie Company, the 111th Infantry, and up on the wall there was a framed photo of the company's only Medal of Honor recipient, Sergeant James Mestrovich. And like, it was kind of one of those things in processing, like, who is this guy? What did he do to earn this honor? And what is his story? So that was kind of one of the driving factors for pushing me down the road into to studying the Great War.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Wow. So you were in the 111th. All right. So so with the 28th, what is the story of the division's formation? So so were its National Guard regiments, were they already being alerted or federalized as the whole prospect of war approached, April 6th of 1917, like the day we declared war? Were they already kind of like on alert?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So to back it up even further, the division has kind of this title as being it's official but unofficial, the oldest division in the Army. So the 28th is actually initially formed as a division in 1879. So the Pennsylvania National Guard restructures at that point, and they decide to go with a division formation for the entire PA Guard. So from 1879 on, they're structured as a division until now they're more than that. They're Division Plus at this point. But they're formed in 1879 as the Pennsylvania Division. In 1916, June of 1916, when they're called up for the Mexican border incursions. So they're going to go down there and they're going to serve as the 7th Division of the United States Army. So they're going to have time as a full division down there on the border as well. Now, just before the war is declared and immediately after, a lot of these units that had just returned from the border service in 1916, they're going to be called back up to guard key infrastructure in Pennsylvania. So you got big industry in Pittsburgh with a lot of the steel production. You've got a lot of rail lines and key bridges that are going to supply the Department of Defense in the early stages of U.S. mobilization. So Pennsylvania Guard units are going to be called up all over Pennsylvania to guard this key infrastructure. So they're going to start off, really before a lot of other units are even called up. They're going to start off with that other mission for the Guard, that domestic defense.
Wow. And this goes a bit aside, but I know a lot of this is, kind of moving towards that war footing, but also like the fear of sabotage and German spies and infiltrators, stuff like that, right? Like along those lines. Okay. Wow, fascinating. Wow. So so how did so you said that the 28th was called the 7th Division, and then it gets rebranded as the 28th because I believe AEF, the numbering system, it went so from like 26 forward to
42.
To 42, it was National Guard units, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So you got to think you got your first 2 units from the Guard to go overseas, or really your bookends there. You got the 26th Division kicking it off with the Yankee Division, and then all the way on the other end of the line, you got the 42nd Rainbow Division. Now that's going to expand beyond that in later wars, but yeah, for the purposes of World War I, that's how we're going to number the Guard units.
Okay. All right. And so where did the 28th conduct its initial training? Like, and did it do it as a division complete, or did it do it like regiments in their own separate posts, like throughout Pennsylvania?
So that actually kind of goes along with your last question about the changing the name of the division. So initially they're going to get called up. They're going to do their local armory attendance, their medical in processing, administration stuff, all the boring S1 stuff we do now. Yep. And we're about to mob, all that's going to go back on in the state. Now, within the state of Pennsylvania, we have a mobilization site that we've used in the Spanish-American War. We're going to use it again in World War I. That's a place called Mount Gretna, which is very close to today's Fort Indian Town Gap, if you're familiar with that. It's kind of the predecessor to Fort Indian Town Gap. So the unit's going to report to Mount Gretna. And then from there, once they're all organized, prepped, got all their equipment drawn, they're going to move down to Camp Hancock in Augusta, Georgia. And that's where that restructuring is going to take place. As you mentioned, they're going to restructure the divisions in the AEF model, this much expanded size. So that old 7th Division that we had on the border, it's going to look totally different in Camp Hancock. So what they're going to do is they're going to take all these small little guard regiments from around the state, and they're going to amalgamate them, and they're going to make these larger regiments that fit that AEF model. So like, for example, my old unit, the 111th, they're going to take the 18th Pennsylvania, which is a very old militia unit from out in Pittsburgh, nicknamed the Duquesne Grays. They actually drilled out of like an old castle in Pittsburgh. It was pretty cool looking. So they're going to take the 18th, and they're going to amalgamate them with the 6th, which is from like the Philadelphia, Norristown area. And the two of those units are going to come together, and they're going to make the 111th. Now, you'll see this a lot with Guard units during this early stage of the war. There's going to be a lot of consternation about losing this historical lineage and this local unit identity. But the 28th is going to push on ahead with that, and they're going to rebrand the old Pennsylvania Division as the 28th with a brand new set of federal numbers, which we're still using today in the Guard. Really, those are mostly our designations now.
And your 111th, excuse me, that is the is that the ones that are called the Ben Franklin Associators?
Yeah, so that's I'll give you a quick summary of that. So back in 1747, they're going to found this organization called the Associated Regiment of Foot, Philadelphia. It's a Quaker state, so we didn't have a militia law, we didn't have a standing militia in Pennsylvania. So to get around that, they started an association, and that's where the Pennsylvania National Guard gets its start. So the Associators are the oldest unit, and their lineage now is drawn through the 111th. There were some companies in the 111th during World War I that would have had that lineage, but some of it gets added later after the war.
Fascinating stuff. That's so cool. So Ben Franklin's Associators is what is one of the nicknames. Awesome. The commander of the 28th. Can you tell us about him? Who was he, and what was his background?
Yeah, so that kind of also goes along with the restructuring too. I think it ties right in. So one of the things that you're going to see happening at Camp Hancock, and I mean, you can take it one way or another. There's a lot of people who say there was a bias against the Guard and Guard leadership, especially within the regular Army channels, but you're going to start to see a lot of leadership replaced. So you're going to start off with this guy, Charles Clement. In 1917, he is a Spanish-American War veteran. He is a Mexican border 1916 veteran. He started in the PA Guard all the way back in 1877 as a private. So this guy has had a ton of time in service. Wow. He's about ready to age out. Now he's going to be part of that first group of division commanders. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but so Pershing sends some over to observe combat, and then they're supposed to come back and kind of adjust the training model. So he's going to go over, he's going to observe combat, and he's going to come back and promptly medically retire. That's going to be the end of his time with the 28th Division in World War I. So it's Charles Clement. He's going to be replaced by a guy named Charles Muir, who's going to be the commander pretty much through the Argonne. Muir is a U.S. regular. He's a West Pointer. He takes command in like December of 1917, and he's going to be at the helm for most of the war until he's elevated to a corps commander level position.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, just to go back to Clemens, is it Clemens? I'm sorry.
Clement, Charles Clement.
Clement. Just to go back to him now, his medical retirement, was that like very convenient? Like, I know Pershing tried to, like, he kind of wanted young, not young, but he wanted like a certain mold of general, like a not necessarily young, but like go-getters, fit. I mean, I know he wanted to can Hunter Liggett, for other reasons, so was it kind of like that thing?
So, I mean, I think you could probably read into it some that way. I think it's also fair to say a guy that's been, wearing the uniform since 1877 probably isn't ready for what we're going to see in the battlefields in 1918. So, I think it can kind of go both ways. He's spoken about very highly in the 20th Division histories, but so is Muir. Muir was beloved by the rest of the guys in the unit. So
Awesome.
I think you can kind of see a good gradual transition for the unit with that changeover.
Right, right. And Pershing was, and just for folks listening, General Pershing, the commander of the AEF, was pretty rough on his commanders. I mean, he demanded results, and many, at all levels of command, anyone who, I don't want to make this sound, it's not like a political thing, but it's, anyone who wasn't showing the proper amount of aggressive spirit that, up to Pershing standard, like they would be relieved instantly. And that meant anyone. So the fact that Charles Muir, kind of survives in his position as division commander, and then is promoted upwards, means that he was probably a fairly tough, commander who got results. So
yeah, and like I said too, the men really liked him to the point that when they're brought home in April of 1919, they're actually going to bring Muir back as the division commander so that he can bring them home, participate in the parades through Philadelphia. He's actually going to hold very briefly a post-war command in that area as well. So
that's fantastic. Oh wow, that definitely says a lot about him. Wow. All right, so 28th is training down in Georgia. Okay, we got the division is being formed. It's training up. We have the commander in place. When did they deploy for overseas duty?
So they're gonna leave April and May of 1918. So they're gonna start boots on the ground in May of 1918, and they're gonna trickle in after that. But that's really your first arrival in Calais. There's actually some really great footage of them getting off the boats in Calais, and then they're gonna go train with BEF advisors. So they're drawing the SMLE rifles, which I always thought was so cool because you can actually see like the look of confusion on the privates' faces as they're like looking at these SMLEs and trying to figure out how they're going to function.
Wow. So once they arrive in France, they train up with the BEF. Where did they do frontline service? Was it with the British or did they serve frontline with the French?
So they're going to be spread out in these rear area trenches. Like for example, I think some of them around like Picardy, and they're gonna do this kind of rear area training with the BEF. No real combat, just kind of like prepping and getting ready. But then they're gonna move in to the French line right around like the end of June, July timeframe.
Okay.
And they're gonna be right along kind of the Marne at a very climactic moment for the Marne. So their first real combat action is going to be 2 platoons from the 111th, one from A Company and one from B Company, are going to be sent on July 1st to attack Hill 204 in Chateau Thierry. If you're familiar with the American monument that's there today with a little museum under it, that is Hill 204. So that is where the first combat action of the 28th Division is. These 2 platoons are attached to, I believe it's the French 153rd Infantry, and they're going to take that hill they're going to attack that hill. They're not going to take it. But it's going to be a pretty brutal, bloody fight, and they're going to perform very well there, decorated by the French for their actions. But that's their real first time in combat.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow. Okay. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so that's their first live sector of the front. So so we have the 28th. You just gave me the first engagement with German forces. Like, what is their, I guess my follow-on question to that would be, what is their first engagement, like division level engagement with German forces?
Yeah, so I think the Second Battle of the Marne is kind of your good example for that. You're going to see not really as a full division command controlling them, but pockets of the division all over the place. You're going to have elements of the 109th, 110th, 111th, and 112th infantries as your 4 infantry regiments in the division. They're going to be embedded with French units all along the line.
Okay.
And they're going to get hit by that counterattack. So, for example, there's a very brutal fight with the 109th Infantry, 4 companies from the 109th and the 110th as well, who are dug in with the French 128th Division on an area called Meuse-Argonne, and Sauvigny, I think is the other one. And they're going to be dug in with these positions with the French, and they're going to hit that that German attack on July 15th. Now, what's going to happen is, and you'll read a lot of opinions about this, but essentially what's going to happen is the French, they prepare to take the initial attack, and then they withdraw to a second line, and they're going to engage from that second line. Well, somewhere along the line, nobody passed that off to the men of the 109th. So when the French army withdraws and they pull back, the 109th in Argonne, they're going to take the brunt of that German attack. They're going to get cut off, surrounded. They're going to be forced to fight their way back. Now, this is a pretty climactic moment for the division. And their behavior there and their behavior in the Second Battle of the Marne is going to earn them the moniker from Pershing, Men of Iron, which is still a Iron Division, and Men of Iron, still a moniker and a nickname used by the division today.
That's fantastic. Wow. All right. Wow. Okay. That is new. So the current episode I'm writing is one of the sources is a book, and part of the title is like the Iron Division in the World War.
Yeah.
So fantastic. Wow. I didn't know the background to all of that. All right. So what are some, so we've got Chateau Thierry, we've got Argonne and Sauvigny. What are some other notable engagements / actions of the 28th during the Great War?
So I think you know what my all-time favorite is. You've probably heard me post or talk about it far too much, but in August and into the beginning of September, there's going to be this action along the Velle River at a place called Fimes and Fimet. That's a town that's going to be initially taken by the 32nd Division, Wisconsin and Michigan National Guard. Yep. And the 28th is going to kind of leapfrog in and relieve them in Fimes. And if you listen to your episode that you did on
yes.
Fimes, and if any of your listeners are checking that out, this is pretty much there's a reason it kind of strikes with me so much. It's not what you expect for a World War I battle. This is a brutal street fight. Yes. This is house-to-house warfare, flamethrowers, mortar barrages, hand grenades, Maxims and show shots behind every corner. This is a rough fight. And I think the other thing that really strikes me with it is just the pure volume of valor awards that come out of this fight. I mean, this is like a 30-day fight. And you've got 30 to 40 Distinguished Service Crosses, a Congressional Medal of Honor, wow. Countless Croix de Guerres, and later when they're upgraded, the Silver Star citations come out of this. And this is kind of that pinnacle of World War I experience for the guys, especially in the 5-6 Brigade, the 111th and the 112th Infantry. Every post-war memoir from the division, from those two units, is going to devote significant time to Fimes and Fimet and just the absolute nightmare that it was as a fight. And I know you've read Bob Hoffman's memoir. I mean, Bob Hoffman talks extensively. I mean, he's cut off in the town, forced underground, knocking the walls down in the basements to travel between them. Yeah. And that's just the guys that are trapped in Fimet. You have other guys on the other side of the Velle River that are going to be forced to cross the river over and over again. There's going to be this hill nearby called Chateau Diable, where you're going to have some, terrific attempts to take these machine gun nests on top of the hill. And then even once they're in Fimet, they're going to have to hold it against, German onslaughts. There's an entire company of the 112th Infantry that's nearly wiped out in town because they're cut off by a box barrage and they're attacked by stormtroopers. So, I mean, that is probably, to me, Fimes and Fimet is the fight that distinguishes the 28th Division in World War I, specifically the 5-6 Brigade. But I mean, you can go on beyond that, as you've touched on in your most recent episodes on the Argonne. You've got Apremont, Varennes, Le Chêne-Tendu, which is probably one of the other more brutal fights that the 28th Division faces once they work their way into the Argonne. So I think those are the big names for 28th Division in World War I.
All right. And just for listeners, so I have Aaron is mentioning an episode that I've written. So I have written an episode on Fimes and Fimet. It's currently available to Patreon listeners. Quite honestly, if you like, just send me an email and I'll share the episode with you. I mean, I'll take a donation too. But other than that, verdunepodcast@gmail.com, and I'll share it with you. So no worries there. So, and that I want to get into a question here. One of actually didn't write it down, but later, just regarding like some books that really touch on that memoirs specific to the 28th, and that is one of them is, like you mentioned, Bob Hoffman, and I believe it's called I Remember the Last War.
Yep.
And then there's the Harvey Allen,
Towards the Flame.
Towards the Flame, also a fantastic book. So those are two. And folks, I'll put some of the book names in the episode notes, so that you can have them if you're interested in reading them.
Yeah, if I could touch on that real quickly. I mean, the 28th Division is very lucky in immediate post-war historiography. They have a beautiful 5-volume, the Blue Book series, where they cover the division's history, massively detailed, covers all the pre-war guard units. There's a bunch of smaller series that the state puts together out of Harrisburg on the 28th Division. But what you're tapping on right there, veteran memoirs in the 28th, it's just astounding the number of them. Like, I have a stack right here on the bookshelf next to me. I mean, there's 3 from the 111th, there's 2 or 3 from the 112th, and at least 1 from the 109th, and even an MP company guy that writes some memoirs. So I mean, there are just a complete mass of resources on the 28th Division. If you're interested in learning more about it, there's plenty out there.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. Yeah, you definitely have to share some of those names with me.
Sure.
So who are some of the some notable members of the division? I mean, of course, we got Bob Hoffman, who was a lieutenant of infantry, fought at Theme, and he went on to, he became a big, like the first guy to really establish like weightlifting, I think, right?
Yeah. So he's really cool because he starts off, he's a pre-war guardsman. He starts off the war as a corporal, and he gets a commission during the war and ends up coming home as an officer in a pioneer infantry unit. Now, after the war, like you said, he gets professional bodybuilding. He's one of those guys, you always see the pictures of him flexing, at the gym.
Monstrous dude.
Yeah, he was massive. And he used to hang out at international weightlifting competitions with German bodybuilders that were veterans of the German army. So it's all in his book. It's pretty wild. And he goes on to found the York Barbell Company. So if you've ever been at the gym and you see those plates with the big York on the side, yeah, that's Bob Hoffman right there.
That's awesome.
Son of the 111th. So I mean, yeah, he's a classic guy. Harvey Allen, as you mentioned, Towards the Flame, which I consider probably the best memoir of World War I out there. It's brutally honest, and he doesn't hold back. So Harvey Allen becomes a pretty prolific writer. He writes a ton of other books, Anthony Adverse, several on the American Revolution, just a bunch of narrative stories. And he does another one, It Was Like This, which is 2 short stories based on his time with the 111th in World War I.
Okay.
Basically, like coming of age of a young soldier and coming to terms with having to kill. And then another one which kind of talks about the issues with command overseas. So Harvey Allen is another great guy. He's actually buried down here in Arlington. So I've visited his gravesite a couple times. Now, beyond them, my all-time favorite guy to talk about is James Mestrovich. Sergeant James Mestrovich is the division's first Medal of Honor recipient. Now, what makes him so cool is his backstory is just probably the most American thing you'll ever hear. So he is an immigrant here to the United States from what is now Montenegro, at the time was Serbia. He's going to come over and he's going to initially work in California with his family. Then he's going to make his way to Pennsylvania, and he's going to be working in a hotel in 1916. And a group of Red Cross doctors and nurses are getting ready to go over to Serbia to deal with the typhus epidemic. Okay. And he's going to be brought on as an interpreter. He's so inspired by the Americans that go over there and treat this epidemic that upon returning to Pittsburgh, he enlists in the local National Guard unit. He basically says, and he says this in a newspaper interview, the experience of watching these Americans go and catch typhus and in some cases die to help out his fellow countrymen. He's so inspired by it, he wants to give back to his new home. Oh, so he joins the Pennsylvania National Guard. He goes down on the Mexican border, comes back. He's called up for France. In that brutal street fight at Theme and Fimet, he's with C Company in the 111th. He's across the Velle River, and his company commander is shot down in the street and is laying there wounded. when an intense artillery and machine gun barrage hits the town square. Now, Mestrovich has made his way to cover. He looks back, sees the company commander laying there wounded. He runs out in the barrage, lifts him on his back, and carries him back to safety, and he survives the incident. So, Mestrovich is wounded. He's shot multiple times during that engagement. He goes to the hospital, eventually makes his way back to the unit against doctors' recommendations. And he is killed leading a patrol in the Argonne just a week before the end of the war. So he's both a dramatic and inspiring story, but also one that's horribly depressing in the end.
Yeah, as a lot of World War I stories are, but to focus more on the positive, like seriously, like what an American story. Montenegrin immigrant, winds up fighting it for a Pennsylvania National Guard unit. I mean, like that is really doesn't get more American than that. That's fantastic. What were the years of that American mission to Serbia and Montenegro for the typhus breakout?
So if I recall correctly, the typhus epidemic begins like 1914 in Serbia. I mean, so you got to think too, like they're in the crux of the brutal Balkan portion of the war. They're not really having the infrastructure to treat an epidemic while also fighting an international war, and an invasion of their country. So I think around 1915 to 16, you start seeing these American missions go over, and they start treating the civilian population. A lot of it's going to be food aid as well as medical aid coming from the United States to Serbia.
Yep.
And a lot of Americans saw the Serbians too as a victim early on in the war. I mean, even today, they kind of look at them as a victim state.
Right. Wow, fantastic. So we've got, so I believe it was the 28th Division. So going into the Meuse-Argonne now, I've got episodes that have talked a good deal about them. But I believe that, is it true, like they were the longest serving division in the Meuse-Argonne? Like they're the ones who saw frontline service for the longest, or did somebody else get that?
So they're going to go, I don't think they're the longest serving. So basically they're going to have this initial mission with the kickoff, I think 26 September, they're going to step off. And then I think most of the division is withdrawn from the main fighting by about like 4 October. So they're not going to be in the main push very long. As you recall, they're adjacent to the 35th Division, who's going to get hammered pretty badly in the opening of the Argonne. And, the 28th is just recovering from Fim and Fimet. The 56th Brigade's, chock full of replacement soldiers. There's your stereotype comments from a lot of the members of the unit that they didn't know how to fire their weapons. They were ill-trained. A lot of these are guys coming directly from these replacement depots into the line. So they're going to have some trouble as well. I mean, they're going to face some pretty hard objectives. Le Chentendu is no joke. That is a brutal, brutal fight. They're going to fight well there. But by the beginning of October, they're going to move to a quieter sector. And they're still going to carry out patrols. They're still going to be participating, but they're not going to be the main push anymore because they've been bloodied too badly.
Okay. And so where do they finish out the war? And what was the division's service record at the end of hostilities on 11th of November?
Sure. So like I said, they're going to be kind of in this reserve line. Oh, the name of the town is escaping me right now. Oh, you're killing me. But so they're going to pull back into this reserve sector. And they're going to kind of be, like I said, continuing out patrols. They're kind of resting and refitting. You're going to have this ambush where Mestrovich is killed, or they're moving one unit from one sector to another, and they're going to run into some machine gun nests there, and significant loss of life. It's about 50 casualties in C Company at that time. So that's, there's a lot like that going on. You're going to have the field artillery elements from the 53rd Field Artillery Brigade. We're going to continue being engaged. They're actually going to go all the way up to the Wipers front, and they're going to be up there. Wipers Lease, I think, is the front for that.
Yep.
By the end of the war, the division's going to rack up campaign honors for Champagne-Marne, Aisne-Marne, and Meuse-Argonne, and Champagne and Lorraine as well. So for their training time. So they're going to have a pretty significant battle record as a division. It's going to be about a little over 14,000 casualties. Of that, over 2,000 killed in action.
Wow. And that's, so I know so for listeners of American divisions in World War I were these mammoth organizations, typical, I believe French and German divisions numbered around 12 to 15,000 guys. American divisions were 28,000 men. So, and that was because Pershing wanted a lot of rifles on hand. Like he wanted to be able to take casualties and continue fighting. So for the 28th Division, numbered by organization around 28,000 men, for it to lose 14,000 guys. I mean, and that's primarily from the fighting regiments. That means, my God, pretty much every regiment was decimated at least like once over. Like, wow.
Yeah, I left out too the machine gun battalions, the 107th, 108th, and 109th, who are detached, detaching their guns to support these infantry units. They're firing massive machine gun barrages in Thiem and Fiumet. So these, and in the Argonne too, with great effect. In fact, 109th Machine Gun Battalion, there's this great study that the War Department did called Infantry in Battle in like the 20s and 30s. And there's an entire section on the 109th and their preparatory fires in the Argonne before the 28th Division steps off. So, I mean, they are engaged heavily, and they do a phenomenal job as well. In all of the 28th engagements. So, and
by just to go down the rabbit hole just a little bit, like this infantry in battle, talking about the preparatory fires, is that the machine gun barrages?
Yes, yeah. So basically, to look in this text, if you're not familiar with it, you can get it online for free through the Combined Arms Research Library that's run out of CGSC. So if you go on Carl, as it's called in military nerd circles, if you hop on Carl and you look up infantry in battle, it's this great kind of lessons drawn from the experience in the First World War, and it's from all sides. So most of it's AEF, but you're also going to have a smattering of Russian and German and French units in there as well. I think some British even. So you're going to have a couple, different perspectives, but they take both good and bad leadership examples. And I glossed over it, but one of the bad examples is talking about the commander of the 111th, that theme, and about how he is not forward enough to understand what's going on to his unit while they're being engaged. So he's back in a command post. He doesn't see what his companies are going through up on the line. But the positive example, like I said, the machine gun battalions of the Keystone Division, getting down in the jump off trenches with the line units, observing where the objectives are going to be, and shaping and building their fires plans to meet the needs of the infantry units.
Wow, fantastic! So taking the time to do the recon to know the ground that they're going to be working. So basically like doing the research so that they can best support the infantry moving forward. Yeah, that's
Absolutely
fantastic. That's fantastic leadership. That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, even with the example of the commander of the 111th, I firmly believe that like pretty much everything like in life like offers a lesson. It just depends, if you're able to see it and draw from it. So, we can look at that and rather than, I guess like, hey, yeah, like he was way too far back. Like, well, what's the lesson there? Like, you need to be further forward so you know what's going on the ground. So everything is a lesson. So awesome, man. Wow, fantastic. So this has been a great talk on the 28th Division. And so the name is the nickname of the division is, of course, the Iron Division. You call it the Keystone Division for its patch. Is it actually called? I've always understood that it's called the Bloody Bucket as well. That comes from World War II. Is that true, or is that like myth?
Yeah, no, that's accurate. Bloody Bucket is Blutiger Eimer, I think is the German translation. So that's going to come out of their experience in World War II. It's going to be a nickname that comes from the German army for their patch on their shoulder, which if you've ever seen it, it's a bright red Keystone. So that's going to be the World War II nickname, and a lot of people will call it that. The division prefers to be known as the Iron Division because it harks back to a time where they were taking less brutal frontline casualties. If you look at the 28th Division of World War II, they have a rough go of things. They seem to hit patch after patch of just brutal fighting. From the Siegfried line to the Hurtgen, and then into the Bulge. So I mean, they have a rough go. But to go back to the Keystone designation, I think it's worth noting Pennsylvania goes by the name the Keystone State, and the Keystone symbol is something that's been used by the PA Guard all the way back to that founding date I was talking about for the division in 1879. The state's going to designate multicolored keystones, different colors depicting different brigades, because again, they're in this divisional formation.
Right.
So each brigade is going to have a separate color to denote which unit they're from. And so when the war is coming to a close in October of 1918, and the divisions are starting to select their insignia for wear, the 28th is going to fall back on the exact same symbols that they've always used as an organization. And in October, they're going to adopt that red keystone to denote the 28th Division. We talked a little bit about before we popped the cameras rolling too. They even used a pretty complex divisional marking system, which I'll show for your YouTube viewers here. But each element of the division had their own colored keystone that denoted who they were. So just like today, when we throw our barracks bags on the truck and we get to the download point, they're all mixed together. We gotta organize them. At that time, every barracks bag in the 28th Division would be marked with a colored keystone. For example, the 111th Infantry was a blue keystone with a white border and a small red, what looks almost like an artillery shell in the center. And that would have been a marking that was used for all the different elements from the sanitary train to the division headquarters.
Wow, fantastic. Wow, amazing. Thank you. So I wanted to ask the significance. I knew the Keystone, the divisional symbol had a Pennsylvania history back behind it. So thank you for that. So amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. God, thanks for taking time out of your evening, out of your busy schedule, for coming on this podcast and talking 28th Division. Folks, I have had this in the works for months, and Aaron has been very good and very patient. So this is so cool. And when we stop recording here, I want to talk about like books and stuff like that, so I can get it up on episode notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but awesome. All right. Where should we, so Aaron, now from 28th to you, sir, where should we look for you? And I know you put up some pretty cool stuff on Instagram. So anywhere we should look for you there, like with the Army leadership development?
Sure. So you could follow my work accounts. We're under Leaders Recon on Facebook and Instagram for the Army National Guard's Leader Development Program. Or if you want to just see 28 specific nerd stuff, you could follow me. It's kind of a funny name, but Pie Pants on Instagram. That's a story that goes back to Iraq, and we'll leave it there. But that is where you can find me on Instagram, and I post probably 2 to 3 things about the 28th Division every week. So you'll find
fantastic. It's fantastic stuff. So excellent. All right, guys. All right. So folks, there you have it. Leaders Recon and Pie Pants on Instagram. We will leave it there. Although I'm dying. But nope, we're gonna leave it there. So all right. Well, thank you so much. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording here. So great.